Hello everyone, it's Robin the Delta Crafter, and I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. You all really liked the monochromatic shadow stamping that was in my previous video, so I thought I'd dig a little deeper into that technique as well as give you a bonus of what to do when you don't have as many shades of ink. So here on the screen are the 4 shades of lavender or purple that I used for the original shadow stamping. And I'm going to spread these out. These again are my Pink Fresh Studio inks, and you can see here on the covers how those colors kind of go from a very light color to a deep, dark, rich purple. So to do this technique, it helps if you have inks that come in shades or tones that go from light to dark. But if you don't have that in your stash, I'm going to share with you a bonus way to make that work. So for the purpose of today's video, we're going to use some pinks. I'm going to make a card with an aqua, even though I ended up not including that footage. We'll be using some green inks, as well as some peach and apricot shaded inks. Neenah Classic Crest Solar White is my paper of choice to do this technique on. And you can see here I've already had my paper cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, also known as A2 size paper. For the best results with this technique, it is preferred that you have a stamping platform such as the Misty that I have here. And then I'm going to be sticking with the Sunny Lane stamp set from scrapbook.com to do this technique. I'm going to be switching to this Hello stamp, which again, as a reminder, this technique works best with a solid stamp. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to place my cardstock into my Misty in a landscape format. You can do this technique with a portrait layout. What you'll want to make sure of is that you kind of do an estimation to make sure that you don't end up running off the edge of the paper. Trust me, I did that. I found that it's easier to do this in landscape. So what I'm doing right now is I'm moving my paper over 5 squares on my Misty. And I'm doing that because one, I want 1 square for kind of cushion, but the other 4 squares are for the 4 colors of ink that I have. So you need to move your paper over however many squares of 1 square for each color of ink that you have. So if you have 3 colors of ink, you'll want to move your paper over 3 squares plus 1 for cushion. We're going to start out with our lightest color, which is what you want to do if you're going to do this kind of retro shadow effect way of doing this technique. So I'm going to put down my lightest shade of pink in the Pink Fresh Studio. This is the Ballet Slipper ink color, and I'm going to run my microfiber towel across my ink. And you can see there that I don't get a complete coverage of my stamped image. So I'm going to ink it up again and stamp it again. This is a brand new stamp, so I did have to run a microfiber cloth as well as a sanding block across my stamp to remove the film that comes from the manufacturing. So I've stamped that twice. Now I'm going to move my paper up 1 square and over to the left 1 square. Moving my paper up and to the left is going to give me that retro shadow effect that I'm going for. So if I move it to the left, my images are going to kind of shadow and fall to the right. If you move your paper to the right, then your images will shadow and fall to the left. So I'm going to come in with the remaining inks. I'm going to stamp them as many times as I choose. But before I move to my next ink, I'm going to make sure that I move my paper up 1 square and to the left 1 square in order to get that shadowy effect. So here I'm finished with going through all 4 of the inks, and now let's take a look at what this finished product looks like. This is the exact technique that I used to create the purple version in my previous video, and I'm really liking this monochromatic retro vibe that it's giving. So let's take a look at what this looks like if we use shades of green. So always starting with my lightest ink, I move down my my array of inks and going from lightest to darkest. And here's our finished product using the green inks. So what do you do if you don't have several shades or tones of the same shade of ink? Can you still do this technique? Absolutely, you can. And I'm going to show you here. This is a bonus for you guys. So say you only have 2 shades of ink of a particular color. Let's say they're peach or oranges. What you can do is you can stamp your image one time on one level, move your paper, and then stamp that image 2 times the next go around, and that's going to give you a darker color. So that's what I'm doing here with this peach fuzz. I've stamped my image one time, and then I'm going to move my paper up 1 square and over to the left 1 square. So we're up and then we're moving over. I'm going to put my magnet back down. I'm going to use the same peach fuzz ink, and this time I'm going to stamp it twice. So we're going to stamp it once, bring in our microfiber towel, and then we're going to stamp it a second time with the same peach fuzz stamp. So I've stamped 3 times with the peach fuzz. 1 time on my very first impression, and then 2 times on the second impression. And when I open this door, you're going to see that we have what looks to be a separate or shade or tone, but it's actually the same ink. So you can repeat this process as many times as you want, and with as many of the different shades or tones of ink that you have. Remember to move your paper up and over to the left between each stamping so that you ensure that you get that retro shadow stamping effect. So here you can see me, I'm moving on to the apricot color, and I've stamped it 1 time, and then I moved my paper up and over. Now I've stamped it twice. I'm going to get what looks to be, again, a brand new color, but it's actually not. And so because I only positioned my paper, should I say, in my MISTI over 5 squares to begin with, I'm eventually going to have to move my paper where it's going to be sticking out of the left side of my MISTI. That's not an issue because it's not going to crease my paper or ruin what I've already started creating. So I'm just going to keep going. And at any point, whenever you run out of inks, that's where you stop. I had the 4 shades of ink, so I'm going to use all 4 shades of ink for this demonstration. And I'm going to end up with 8 stamped images. So I'm giving a final stamp of our 4th ink color, Persimmon. And when I open the door of the MISTI and bring this closer to the camera, you can really see this retro vibe that was created by using these inks in this way. So if you don't have several tones or shades of an ink color, this technique is a great way to stretch the inks that you have. So off camera, I went ahead and turned our panels into cards. I even made a tag with one of them. And so here you can see the finished product of how we can use this technique to create a clean and simple card that has a lot of wow factor. Let me know in the comments below how you would use this technique or if you've used it before. I want to thank you all for spending your time with me during another video on my YouTube channel. If you've enjoyed what I've shared with you, please consider giving the video a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. As always, the products that I've used today will be listed and linked below. You can always find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Delta Crafter, and you can visit my website at thedeltacrafter.com. It's been fun sharing this technique and bonus with you all today, so until next time, enjoy!